Today I'm joined by Amanda Jones, whose work on Murderbot gives this brilliantly awkward, anxious, unexpectedly tender world such a distinct emotional pulse. The score is thrilling, funny, and quietly moving in ways that really sneak up on you. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
So I want to start with the main theme. I feel like it's a really good diving in point for the whole sound of the show. It feels like a real statement of intent because it tells you that this isn't going to be a cold, generic sci-fi sound. It's propulsive,
hmm
tactile, hypnotic, and emotionally alive. How did you think about the main title theme as the blueprint for the show's sound?
Oh, that's interesting. In some ways, it is the blueprint, but its primary feeling to invoke is like, grab your attention, viewer, get ready for this raucous, bizarre show, with swirling, twirling synthy textures and orchestral textures, and but also the feeling of just it's not a very soothing main title, I would say.
No.
It's very hyper. And so it kind of plays ironically in some ways because there's a lot of silence in the show too. So a lot of times the main title will slam in after a really deadpan joke. So its goal is to just like wake up, like this is a ridiculous, hilarious, fun, action-packed, and also just wild and wonderful series. Get ready, sort of feeling. Very
Yeah.
mechanical, playing into the robotics of it, but also the human element of it just being unpredictable. It's very strange textures and sounds and ear candy that you'll also hear throughout the main
Yeah.
title.
And you get that clash of those two, like that dichotomy, which really,
Mhm.
really works so beautifully with the tone of the show. One of the things I loved, like right away, is how propulsive the score is. Like, there's a real, if you don't mind me saying, like an EDM influenced pulse to it that feels hypnotic. It's not
Mhm.
aggressive. And in cues like, for example, like Crew Montage, which I just think is
Mhm.
a banger of a track, it almost like locks you into Murderbot's headspace. So how conscious were you of using that forward motion as part of the storytelling,
Yes.
but
Oh, of
also
course.
not just to energize the series, but to create a kind of psychological momentum?
Exactly. Yeah, so when you're hearing that sound, that cue, crew montage, we're introducing the crew members and from like Murderbot's perspective. So he's going around and he's, scoping out their like establishment they've created on this planet, like their home base for on this planet. And so it's kind of like this fun, vibey, mysterious, curious, sort of club-ish sort of feeling. And it plays into the playfulness of the crew, the curiosity of, so the perspective of for Murderbot, his curiosity around the crew. And then for the crew themselves as a theme, it plays into just like how unconventional they are. They are, the way the world works is like there's a corporation rim and all the different planets have their own um you know nationalities, so to speak, and
Yeah,
they have to opt in to work with corporation rim to get resources X, Y, and Z. And so they are an example of a planet that don't really conform, and so there's a non-conformist community. So the music is just kind of tapping into that curiosity from Murderbot, and also we want to know more about these crew members, and they have their own conventions and ways of thinking, and it just it makes it curious for all parties. The
it
viewer,
sure does.
Murderbot, learning more about the crew. And yeah, they're playful and they're goofy, but they're great. They're
Yeah,
unserious crew.
they're unserious, but but you're not. It's not like you're skewering them at all. Like we're still on
Mhm.
side, but I think you're signaling that playful vibe. It's a really beautiful way into the show, and which
Mhm.
leads me to this. This is the dichotomy that I love. There are
Yes.
parts of the score where it feels like you're really inside Motorbot's head with that sense
Mhm.
of tension,
Yes.
unease, and particularly anxiety coming from within.
Yes.
What were you trying to capture musically in those moments?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, definitely. I wanted to just make you feel still and anxious, kind of like you're gripped with that feeling of anxiety, like you can't move. What decision should you make? What should I stay still? Should I move? Should I hide? Should I stay put and pretend? So I wanted to kind of capture that feeling sonically. And by doing so, I'm using, organic textures. I'm using a singwon, which is a Korean instrument that can reach these really high frequencies that I then double with a synth. And this roller Juno 6 synth that I have, and I create these kind of bending textures where they kind of are in parallel and they're in the same tone, but then they like kind of bend apart, and it creates these crazy frequencies that are a little bit grating, but also I think they're very beautiful, but also a little bit anxiety inducing. But
Yeah.
they definitely catch your attention and they make you really focus in on all the micro movements that Murderbot is doing. So Alexander Skarsgård is such an extraordinary actor, and you have a lot of close-ups on the face, and so he's so good with his eyes and his just his whole language, all the muscles in his face. He's so good at eliciting like nervousness and but trying to mask it at the same time. And so I'm just trying to cradle that performance with like a unique soundscape that kind of elicits the same sort of thing. It's like very minimal. It's like maybe one or two instruments, but very, very anxiety inducing.
Yeah. It's incredible how music can do that to us without us really even realizing it. We're in the
Yeah.
story, of course, but that
Yeah.
music's right there, just like no, 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 no. It's just
It's
beautiful
ear
how it's
candy. It's ear
it's it.
candy.
Yeah,
It's almost like, your nervous system is transmitting information. It's just like how that would sound sonically, just like, information and energy and electric pulses going through your body to, signal certain feelings and whether they're grounded or not, founded or not. So,
yeah. I love that. See, now, what I really would love to know though is if we go back to the beginning when you first signed onto a project like this, the
hmm
character is a fascinating contradiction because Murderbot is sarcastic, avoidant, anxious, compassionate, occasionally frightening, and often quite funnier than it wants to be. So then, how do you start composing for a protagonist whose inner life is built out of that many tensions at once?
Oh, that's interesting. That's a great question. I think, I have kind of an insatiable hunger to like play around with a lot of sonic ideas. So something like a Murderbot character that is so complicated, it allows for me to kind of really play um, with a lot of ideas. Like I don't like to sit too still with any sort of thing for too long. So the series, the characters themselves, they're all so complicated and so nuanced. It really allows me to play a lot melodically and sonically, texture-wise, instrumentation-wise, um, and to dig in with a variety of feelings, which ultimately feels like the human experience. It's like how you go about your day. You don't feel one way, it's like at any given moment you're feeling all sorts of ways. So just being able to tap into that swirling, frenetic, evolving, the nature of being is kind of what I'm trying to create. And that's just the way I think in general.
Yeah,
You know, um, I wouldn't want to just put like a 4/4 pop song on top of Murderbot. Like I want to feel that evolving curiosity and sensation and anxiety and, you know, calm. It's like there's all sorts of feelings to capture, and I love that. I love being having to be able to do that because that's just the way I
yeah.
naturally kind of think. I'm the kind of person that will write a 7-minute song and maybe a 13-minute like psychedelic rock piece rather than like a 2-minute banger. So being able to kind of like swirl in and create all these different textures and evolving ideas, and then it's almost like you're telling yourself, and then kind of musically, and what happens next.
Love
Um,
that.
mhm.
I was just making a note because there's something else that what you just said that I remembered that I find it very compelling when a score can fuse orchestral and synth elements really seamlessly, and this one obviously does that very well. You've got this tactile synth bed underneath much of it, but then you've got cues like "Time to Leave," open
Mhm.
up a more heroic orchestral sound, and then maybe your defective, which moves
Yeah.
from this haunting string element into something deeply ambient and, as you said earlier, kind of spiraling. How do you
Yes.
calibrate that blend so the music
Mhm.
can keep expanding without drifting away from the show's core sound?
Yeah, so I think once you kind of create your sandbox, like you kind of decide what your instrumentation is, then that's it. So, the feeling of intimacy, and these were direct conversations with the director. It's like, he was like, I really want the cello to articulate when like solo cello, when the crew members are feeling really vulnerable and we're seeing them in their respective spaces in their rooms kind of um trying to reckon with all sorts of feelings they're having of loneliness and being afraid on this planet, not trusting their crew members. So yeah, so that was really important to, orchestra and soloists, solo flute, solo cello, whatever, made to like articulate that feeling of humanity, so to speak, and then a more electronic elements to elicit that, to create that. That's like kind of like Murderbot's base, and then he kind of
Hmm.
evolves from there. So into its own humanity. So Murderbot is this like electronic thing that's malfunctioning, and I wanted the electronic elements of the show to kind of sound like that, like an electronic synth that's like malfunctioning. So that was the roadmap, and then the sing along was something I had in my music library that I had recorded just so much of it, and I was like playing so much with synth that I wanted to track his humanity with something that felt like it could sound like a synth or it could be like an organic instrument. So that was like a little the thread to get to the more organic stuff. So as the series trends, we go from a very, very electronic sort of feeling score, and then as we go along the different episodes, it becomes more and more organic, more and more emotional, and we're kind of tracking that feeling of humanity over time with
Wow.
organic instruments. And so yeah, so that was the framework. We're really just honed in on that sort of feeling. Like the instrumentation was like, this is what this is for, and this is what this is for. And so that was our sandbox. That was what we're playing with. So you had that as your
Yeah,
roadmap throughout.
throughout the show. And like, but you blur those boundaries so beautifully because at the beginning of a track, I'm like, oh, there's that really great orchestral sound. By the end of the track, that orchestral sound has been completely warped into something very synthetic.
Hmm.
And I couldn't tell where the transition actually happened because I'm so in the
Yes.
moment.
And when
Like
it comes to
that's the goal.
orchestration, yeah, and when it comes to orchestration and having a 50-piece orchestra to work with, full orchestra, it was extraordinary to kind of decide what lines, like what synth line do I want to double with bass clarinet, or you know what I mean? So it's like making those choices of how we want to like weave in and out, or French horn like here and there. That the orchestration was a lot of fun to figure out. Like maybe we'll try this idea. There was a lot of trying a lot of different ideas to blend the two. That way I could kind of like fade them in and fade them out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this next question is more about how you're doing some of the storytelling through the music, and it's this particular point. What stands out to me is that the score sometimes feels more emotionally honest than Murderbot itself. Like the character is constantly suppressing
Yeah.
vulnerability or whatever, but your music lets us feel the loneliness, the confusion, the attachment underneath. So were there scenes where you felt the score was really carrying emotions that Murderbot itself would never willingly acknowledge?
Oh, I would say at the end of the series, there's a track on the soundtrack called End Message.
Yeah.
And that is where he's saying goodbye to the crew members. Or see you later. We'll see. And um so yeah, so that was going back and forth between like the way the crew felt and then the way Murderbot felt about leaving. And so that is kind of those like a little bit sparser, looser, esoteric, synthy elements, but then when he's kind of like traveling away on the spaceship, and it's a very warm, kind of like John Williams-esque feeling.
Yeah, it
And I say
is.
that because I adore John Williams, but
Of course.
I'm making it my own. But it's like
Yeah.
it's a nod there with Celeste, and sort of feeling of taking off and a childlike wonder. That's like the thing where
Yes.
Murderbot is just like experiencing like true autonomy for the first time, not supervised by a crew. He's like truly, truly free for the moment. So, and on his own
Yeah.
for the very first time. So I wanted to capture like childlike wonder, which they may or may not know that they're experiencing that, but also capturing the crew's feelings too, like that bittersweet goodbye, knowing that this is what needs to happen for
Mm.
Murderbot's growth as an individual.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that was
Wow.
a really long piece. That was really beautiful to write.
Yeah, I can
Mm.
imagine. Yeah, it's a really gorgeous piece that punctuates the end of the score. But something else that's really cool, obviously, is the rise and fall of Sanctuary Moon, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
a nice pivot that you get to do something a little different as
Yes.
part of the whole score, but because it goes really huge and lush and unapologetically like sincere, the joke
Hmm.
lands harder because the
Yes.
music is so earnest. So talk us through
Yes.
having some fun with that side of the score.
Exactly. The more you really sell the feeling of just like bombast and kind of like 1940s, 1950s sort of writing style for tracking like this is huge, this is ridiculous, this is like something's happening, you know. Um then it lands the joke even more. But that was really cool. That was 100% orchestra.
Wow.
And you know, really creating like a Bernard Herrmann-esque sort of feeling. And and that was just like a lot of stream of conscious writing. Definitely inspired by that genre, that decade of music, orchestral
Mhm.
music in film. And it was just fun just to go crazy with it, to be honest, and just to be over the top. The visual performances are over the top, the acting is over the top, the VFX are over the top. It's the costumes are over the top, so the music has to match. And the Sanctuary Moon main title theme for the show within the show
Mhm.
um, was a voice memo from Chris Weitz, the co-showrunner. And he sang that to me, and I took it and I orchestrated it, and it became what it became. And and then we found a vocalist, EXO Ann, to be it's the big power vocal for the main title. And then the other elements of the other times we see that universe that we that I'm just kind of pulling from that instrumentation and just ridiculous, you know, bombast, orchestral bombast to create just like a fun feeling. But it's definitely a
It
nod to
sounds
like the 40s and 50s.
Yeah, for sure. And it just like looks and sounds like you would have had a lot of fun on that side of it. I mean, the whole score is fun, but this is where you
Yes.
just be like, let's just go for gold and be
Yes.
super earnest and wear our heart on our
Yeah.
sleeve.
Just
And
like rip, like yeah, like rips, like
yeah,
flute rips, like trombone rips, like and just
so
like
good.
it's so great to do that. It's like it's what you hope for as a composer
Yeah,
to be. We
exactly.
recorded, yeah, we recorded at the Warner Brothers lot,
All
which
right.
is an iconic lot. We
Mm-hmm.
were working with musicians that have recorded on Star Wars, like all ages. Like there's like some young players, there's
God.
older players. It's like this is such a dream. So the space is
Yeah.
iconic, iconic films, like the players themselves are on iconic films that I love and adore. And they're just nailing this vibe. You know, it's like I felt like I had been transported to another time.
I know.
Just,
Just like
you know,
think back to when you were much younger and just imagine like the
yes,
opportunity that you get to do something like this.
I
That's
know.
so cool.
Yeah, the greats like Sinatra, Quincy Jones, like with John Williams, like all those people, Ennio Morricone, like they were just had their, you know, sheet music under their arm, going to these stages, TV stages all the time, you know, and just
Yeah.
like making notes on the fly, and then the director's there, and it was also organic, and it was so lovely to flex that muscle. It's what you study, but there's so much in modern composition, film scoring composition that you're just doing mock-ups or small ensemble stuff. So it was just awesome to have such a
Yeah.
large ensemble and go for it and have just like a lot of creative freedom to play, which is a dream.
That is living the dream. But
Yes.
speaking of, like, obviously the collaboration with Chris and Paul and the whole creative team is very important. On a show like this with such a delicate tonal balance, how
Mhm.
important was that relationship in shaping how far the music can lean into things like sincerity or comedy or anxiety or danger?
You know, once we locked in on episode one, it was smooth sailing. So once we had some ideas that were working for the pilot episode, the first episode, you know, Apple had their thoughts about certain things and wanting it to be like Apple generally loves things like snappy and bombastic and really owning the genre. And then Paul and Chris Weitz love nuance. And so really checking those boxes and making sure all parties are happy. And then once we kind of landed on that tone, and the unique sense of the show, then the rest of the episodes were like smooth sailing. We had like no notes basically, which is insane for the rest. But it was really focusing on episode one because it captured a lot of the feeling for the series. And then we were good to go. It was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yes.
Amanda, thank you for such a generous look
Right.
inside the score. There's so much heart and soul in the way it carries Murderbot's inner life. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for listening and taking the time.
All right, we're done. That was so perfect. Thank you
Yay!
so much.
Oh my
Yay.
gosh.
We're
Thank
done.
you. Cool.
Awesome. So this is the plan. So I'm going to get this written up ASAP. We want to try to get it obviously published before Emmy voting. And I'm hoping that you get Emmy
Oh
nomination
yeah.
number 2 for this. Like, I think you deserve it.
Oh my
We'll
gosh.
see. Fingers
We'll
crossed, right?
see. Yes,
We'll
exactly. I
see.
need to, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Manifest it. Let's get some candles out.
Campaign harder.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm
But
just realizing I
yes,
probably should, yeah, that's funny. It's so soon, actually. Oh my
it is
gosh.
so soon. Like June 11 is when the voting starts. So like,
Okay.
yeah, it's all happening. So
Okay.
once we get it online, we'll get it on social media, and then yeah, then we'll just take it from there, and hopefully we can catch up again on your next project or the next
I know.
season.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so